everyone, and welcome to Gold Diggers, a show where you discuss stories of leadership and motivation, with sports serving as a metaphor dedicated to daily grinders, corporate athletes, and go-getters. I'm your host, Carlos Pineda, your resident box-to-box midfielder or point forward, transitioning from esports to football and vice versa. In the previous episode, we had Gretchen Hall, a former volleyball athlete who prides herself in being a woman in action, inspiring people in this time of crisis by encouraging all of us to be open to change, by acknowledging that the best life is on the other side of our fears, and teaching us that there's nothing wrong from taking things one step at a time. And I wouldn't be able to discover more about her journey and life learnings if it weren't for the help of my fellow gold diggers. Let's welcome all of them, Simone, Relly, and Robbie.
Hi guys, Simone here. We have a very interesting guest tonight, someone we're very happy to have and whose voice we believe has to be heard even more. So please stay tuned and dig in with us.
Fellow diggers, here we are again. Thanks again for tuning in. Another great Saturday night for us. A very exciting conversation that we have in store for you. So please stick around. You wouldn't want to miss this.
Hi team, it's Robbie here, and once again, I'm very excited and honored to be with you all today to have a conversation with a friend and a personal inspiration of mine, Ada Milby. So please stay tuned, and because we know you wouldn't want to miss any of the possible learnings you can pick up from this episode. Carlos?
It's a pleasure to have my fellow gold diggers in the show. All right, let's now proceed to the main event. Introducing our guest. She is a believer of free will, inspired by her father's belief that she could be anyone she aspires to be, which explains her leap of faith by transitioning from figure skating to American football. A soldier, serving the U.S. Army for 10 years, which included tours in Iraq, holding the position of staff sergeant. A member of her college rugby team, which paved the way for her to join the Philippine women's rugby team in 2012. From there, she obtained numerous accolades, which included a bronze medal finish in the 2015 and 2017 SEA Games and a silver medal outing in the 2019 SEA Games. An advocate of gender equity in her roles as a Secretary General of the Philippine Rugby Football Union, as a chairperson of women's rugby in the Asia Rugby Executive Committee, and as the first female member of the World Rugby Council. Besides her passion for rugby, she's likewise a loving mother of two, and most notably, the sister of local celebrity Sam Milby. Without further ado, let's welcome Miss Ada Milby.
Hey guys, how are you tonight?
Oh, we're doing great, Ada. I hope it actually applies to you as well.
Yeah, I'm having a good day. Actually was out in Laguna yesterday, so it's been nice to get out of the city and be a little bit refreshed.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, that provincial setting is actually something that could be the sort of relaxation, in this form of crisis that we're facing right now. Yeah. So besides the fact that you're in Laguna, and chances are that you might have that active lifestyle because of the fact that you're surrounded with that sort of provincial aura. So tell us, Ada, I was curious, what have you been up to lately?
Well, I think everyone's been adapting, right, in this challenging pandemic time. And even though that there's no sport going on at the moment, there's still tons of stuff going on in the background. So there's lots of policy changes, all the things that we said that we never have time for because we're too busy actually administering sport or too busy, going to sporting events. We actually have the time to reorganize that stuff and refocus basically what we're trying to fit into the sport and all the things that we said we can do better as an organization. So kind of been doing a lot of that at the World Rugby level, Asia Rugby level, and Philippine Rugby level. And in addition, just trying to really stay connected with the community, especially with the rugby community. We're doing online workouts. I'm still an athlete. I'm still training. So we're training together as a team online, of course. No violation of IATF stuff. And then we're doing some stuff to try and help other people during this crisis. So a lot of us in the volcanoes and in the rugby community have been going out to DSWD from time to time, helping to lift the heavy sacks of rice. So they, when they're packaging all the food up for families, they need people who can lift really, really heavy sacks of rice. And somebody reached out and said, "Hey, we need some rugby players. Can you bring some folks out?" So I've been doing that and staying busy with that as well.
Oh wow! I mean, of course, that sort of presence for you to help people in dire need in this pandemic is really something that sort of inspires everyone to do the same. And Ada, is it true that in this pandemic you're also involved in doing swing dancing classes as well? Am I right?
I wish you could be swing dancing classes right now. Unfortunately, that's too much close contact for to be able to do the classes. But sometimes in our online workouts with the rugby team, we do add a little element of dance to it, but just solo dancing for now.
Oh, all right, okay. You know what, Ada? Maybe I'd like to attend some of your swing dancing classes because I'll be honest with you, I'm a terrible dancer, all right? Like, my style of dancing revolves around jumping up and down. Like, perfect example, when I was in like nursery or when I was in a toddler age, like there's a game where we all had to stop dance, all right? That game, you know, that typical childish game. My strategy is to just to jump up and down. That's it.
Well, Carlos, I say that as long as you can walk, and as long as you can count to 4, you can dance. So happy to have you anytime you want to come and give it a shot. Some people take longer than others, but I'll give it a shot.
All right, yeah, yeah, definitely. You know, I really look forward for those dancing classes. All right, so you know, before you were teaching like swing dancing, you've been involved with rugby and then also with American football. So I'd like to know, Ada, your perspective about what makes rugby different from American football.
Well, I'd say that probably the biggest notable thing that's different between rugby and American football is that there are no helmets, there are no pads, there are no all this extra cushion of protection. So you really just have your gum shield, your mouth guard, and a pair of soccer cleats or rugby cleats to run on the pitch, and that's it. That's basically the big difference. Also in American football, every time that there's a tackle, the play stops, everyone kind of comes back, they huddle together, they think about their next play, they 30 seconds or whatever, and they reset and then they go again. Where in rugby, every time there's a tackle, everyone is scrambling to reset, go. It's on the move all the time, so it's kind of like a wrestling match with sprinting involved, and it just goes on and on and on for about 80 minutes. So it looks a bit chaotic when you first watch it, but really there's a system to it.
All right, okay, indeed. There's definitely, of course, whatever sport that you encounter, there's always a system or a strategy that's going to be deployed. All right, Ada, I'm actually very curious about something in your life. Like, you ended up in figure skating and swing dancing. I mean, you started with figure skating. So I was wondering, how did you end up in figure skating and being involved in swing dancing?
Well, really, sport at a really young age. My parents got me involved into about every possible imaginable sport by the time I was 3 or 4. And we also had a small family pond when I was growing up out in the country that we would go to. And I wanted to learn to skate because I saw my dad out on the ice playing with his friends. And he said, "Oh, I'm not really comfortable with you guys going out on the ice. You might fall through, and then where would we be?" So he had my mom take us to the local ice rink, and I just absolutely fell in love with the sport and kind of just did that for about 12 years. Went to a really high competitive level, national level skater. And yeah, I just something that I knew when I was 4 years old. I was like, oh, I want to be like these girls that I could see on the Wheaties box and end up being, an Olympian one day.
Wow, I mean,
So I always wanted to be an elite athlete. Yeah.
oh wow, I mean, of course, you wanted to, or you aspired to be that elite athlete to the point where you master that sort of grace, coordination, and creativity involved. And I mean, I could even clearly see that, and that is actually innate in front of you, like because of the fact that you and Sam had this photo of you in unicycles, and then you're practicing your juggling abilities.
Yeah, we like I said, my parents got us into lots of different sports, and I mean, it's a random thing that we know how to unicycle, and we can juggle balls, and we can walk on stilts. We had a very interesting childhood, very colorful, and really thankful to our parents for introducing us to all these things, because it makes for good conversation now that we're adults, saying like, "Oh, do you know how to ride a unicycle?" Yeah, it's a weird thing.
Yeah, and then here's like the interesting part. Like, you went from that sort of grace coordination and that sort of like artistry with figure skating, and then all of a sudden you go for something that is rugged, which is American football. So tell me, Ada, how's the transition from figure skating to American football?
Well, if I'm super honest with you, it's because I didn't think I'd make the volleyball team. So after I stopped skating, I was actually homeschooled for a number of years because I was competing at a really elite level, and I wasn't able to balance attending school full time. We were traveling around the country, competing all the time. So once I stopped skating and went back to high school, I knew I wanted to get into another sport, and I went to this volleyball training, and I saw the girls like super matangkad, and I was like, nope, definitely not making the team. And then I thought, well, what is something else that I could do? And I always liked playing sort of pickup games of American football, just out in the backyard. And I don't know why. I just thought, well, I mean, I can do that. I can do that. I can run into people, and I could be kind of quick and agile. And I didn't really think about the fact that no girl had done it before, or that maybe people would think that I was weird to do that, because my dad kind of always told me I could just do whatever I wanted, anything I wanted to pursue. So that was kind of the path that I took, and I didn't realize that it would kind of really shape a whole lot of decisions in my life down the line.
Yeah, I mean, of course, your father's what your father said is something that actually led you to something much more bigger. Like I've heard of you that you were part of that team, that when you were part of that American football team, you're the only women in that team, and you were treated differently due to your gender, and things got a bit dicey or toxic to the point where you understandably decided to leave the team. But looking back, seeing how much you've progressed from that overall experience, may I know how this experience being like the only women in that high school American football team shaped your overall character?
I suppose that growing up as an ice skater, I hadn't really thought. I had never really thought about gender equity or gender justice or any of those kinds of things, and the word feminism. I never really thought of any of that kind of stuff, and then because I guess in my world, in the world that I knew, boys and girls were the same. We all treated the same. Everyone was the same, and so it was kind of my first real experience understanding that, actually, in other people's worlds, boys and girls are not treated the same, and boys and girls don't get the same kind of treatment. So it was really an eye-opening experience for me to recognize that there are lots of differences in the real world about how people view the roles of what girls can do and what boys can do, and especially in sport, there's lots of genderism in sports, and that experience really opened my eyes that, well, there are a couple people that were really supportive of my journey with the football stuff, or the American football stuff. The large majority were not quite prepared for Ada Milby. It was a huge learning experience, and even though I just played the 1 year, I actually could probably attribute a lot of the decisions that have happened in my life since then to basically the challenges that I experienced in that one season of playing American football.
Yep, indeed. And of course, that overall experience actually helped you a lot in your overall career. And I believe my fellow gold diggers would like to delve deep in your overall experiences. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome all of them. Robbie, Simone, and Relly, you know what to do. Take it away.
Thank you, Carlos, for bringing us through Ada's life journey when she was like a kid all the way to her adolescent years and becoming like one of a real good athlete, right? So you were saying a national level figure skater, dabbled also in swing dancing, and eventually made it to as the only woman in the high school football team. So it's very impressive. But not many people know this, because what tends to get highlighted in your life story and career, other than being Sam Milby's sister, is just found in sports. So where rugby lately is the highlight, right? So, but what is interesting is that you spent quite some time in your life as part of the U.S. Army. So can you tell us about that time in your life and what made you sign up for the Army?
Basically, with the American football experience in high school, and I kind of went through some challenges with my parents about what my life direction was going to be like, and we had some arguments about our differences of opinions. Maybe it's arguments is definitely the right word to say. Had some arguments with my parents. They wanted me to go to a particular college. I wanted to go to another college. And of course, my dad always told me I could do whatever I wanted. So we came to some odds about where I should go to school. And I said, well, fine, if you don't want me to go to the school that I want to go to, I'll figure it out myself. And and so, yeah, so figuring it out myself sort of looked a lot like wading through a lot of mud in that first year of college. So I decided to go to a specific university, and honestly kind of went through a bit of a wild bout that first year. I kind of went from being an honor society student. I mean, I topped 10% of my class. And if I'm super honest with you, I mean, like, I was on probation after my first semester. And really that was because I just wasn't turning up to class. I was doing other things. I had other priorities. And I think I was just trying to figure out life. I mean, I'd kind of gone from like my whole life being about ice skating, and then my whole life being about these other things. And then when I got to college, I was kind of like, well, what am I about right now? And I kind of was like a little bit lost in the wilderness, so to speak. Yeah, that's really kind of what led me to why I ended up joining the military, is because I realized at the end of my first year that I couldn't keep going like that. I needed to really I needed something dramatic to just refocus me, and the military provided that. So I actually just signed up because they were going to pay for my college tuition. I thought, well, that's me figuring it out. They're going to pay for my college tuition. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I didn't need that after all. Which, by the way, I don't feel that way now. But but yes, so that was kind of my solution at the time. And then because I don't know how to do anything kind of halfway, I ended up doing 9 years in the military.
So you spent how many years there?
Nine, almost, yeah, just over 9 years.
Awesome. So let's talk about your role there. So what was your designation? What did you do, and what did it entail?
So I was in logistics. So in the Army lingo, we would call it your quartermaster. So basically, it's like called like beans and bullets. So you took care of like food, uniforms, equipment, all of that stuff. So anytime we were going anywhere for an exercise, or when we went on deployment, like when we were in Iraq, basically I was the person that was in charge of organizing transportation of all that stuff. So troops, equipment, anything that we needed to be able to go out and successfully exercise whatever it was we were meant to do, or in Iraq to get all of our people and equipment safely to our destination.
I like that. So what I heard from you is that basically your function is more of like a support position, right?
Exactly, 100% support role. Yeah.
Right. So and I'm sure being in a logistics function, it takes a lot of planning and organization, right?
Yeah, a lot.
So
And a lot of flexibility, I think, because sometimes, as with any plan, when you think something's going to go to plan, it doesn't, and then you've got to recalibrate. So I think that being a good logistician is about having a good plan, but also having a good backup plan.
That's great. So so related to that, so it's not exactly the battle facing position or designation in the armed forces, right? But I'm certain it came with its own challenges. So what can you say was the toughest challenge in your experience?
Well, I'd say that, I mean, specifically that year that I was in Iraq, the toughest challenge that I maybe faced was, in that support role, even though I wasn't out kicking down doors or anything like that. I was out on patrol one day doing some support operations, and there was an improvised explosive device. We call it an IED, and that went off by my truck. And I was really fortunate that it didn't go off the way it was intended to go off. But yeah, I'd say probably dealing with that, and then also kind of that isolation away from friends and family. We didn't have Skype and all that. I mean, it was kind of coming out back then, but we didn't have the internet connectivity back then to be able to reach out on a regular basis. And so I think, yeah, maybe that isolation from my support network was quite difficult that year. But I mean, it's great. That's the thing about adapting, right? I was able to find a different type of support group with my comrades, with everybody that was serving with me in the Army at the time. So so it made a big difference in how I was able to get through that year in deployment.
Right. So I can only imagine like the fear going through your mind, being attacked as the last truck in the convoy, right? So we were discussing in our previous discussion that your roots in sports actually help you prepare for this role. So were there any realizations coming from this experience that brought value for you in your rootedness in sports?
Yeah, 100%. I think that for a long time I've always felt that like sports was training ground for life, and often when you think that you know how you're going to react in a particular situation, but you don't know. You really don't know until that situation actually happens to you, right? And the military provided obviously some training and background in that space, but for me, it was like the thing that you train over and over and over again, and you spend hours and hours and hours, and it seems like it's the most boring thing because it's so repetitive. But then when the actual scenario does happen to you, it's like I was able to stay really, really calm because of those hours and hours of training. And so really for me, it was like that was the same kind of thing that happened in skating and swing dancing and American football, and being able to thrive in a training environment, or to be able to handle pressure of competition, pressure from your teammates, pressure from all the external factors, right? Pressure from the other team. And so I think those kind of things really helped prepare me for the stuff that happened to me when I was in the Army.
And we're fortunate that, of course, nothing happened to you. And of course, we can say we're lucky, but I also believe in the whole saying that luck favors the prepared. So I guess, how you guys were also prepared to manage yourself in that situation. So, despite the many challenges you've faced in your life experience so far, you've always found yourself shooting forward in every endeavor, so including the Army. So can you tell us about the mindset that you use when it comes to obstacles that you've encountered so far?
Well, I guess really it's just about doing your best and recognizing that at some stage the opportunity is going to present itself for you to take advantage of it. When I was kind of going through the military stuff, like I said, I just joined because I was like, oh, they're going to pay for my tuition. And then before I knew it, I was kind of shooting through the ranks of getting promoted quite quickly, just because I wanted to just be the best, and I wanted to know more, and I was just really, really hungry for information, and how could I make things better? Not just how they are currently, but how can I make things better for the future? And so I've always kind of been a little bit obsessed with just making things better, making myself better, making the team better, or in my case in the Army, it was like, how can I make the organization better? How can I make the logistics flow better? And so that's kind of always been a driving force for me, is just being the best that I can be in whatever space, in whatever role that I have. So it's like, whether I was a private, which is like one of the lowest ranking soldiers, it was like, how could it was like not just about being happy with, well, okay, I'm getting enough money for today, or I'm doing enough for what I need. But it was just, I wasn't really motivated necessarily by the money aspect, but it was just about being hungry for the information. And by being hungry for the information, that allowed me to just kind of propel myself forward, because other people saw in me that I was really there to not just show up and clock in and clock out, but actually I was there to make a difference.
Right. I like what you said. No? So if I could boil it down to what you first said, you practically mentioned using or seeing challenges as opportunities, and basically doing your best in every endeavor. And I think all these things that you've done has also translated to what we know you for right now, which is an icon in Philippine rugby and the world. So I think Simone has questions to further bring out these points that we hope you could share with our audience. So Simone.
Hi, Ada.
Hey, Simone.
I love that we have this opportunity to interview being someone with a really unique and rich experience. And it's so great to hear that you have such supportive parents who allowed you to get into whatever sport or activity you wanted. And you went from figure skating to swing dancing to American football to enlisting in the Army and coming to the Philippines and doing so much for Philippine rugby. So, when you moved to the Philippines, you got involved with the Philippine rugby football union, and you made some big strides with its grassroots program. And you became a member of the board of directors, and now you're PRFU Secretary General. And so, how was it like starting out and growing the sport of rugby in the Philippines?
Well, I think really the first year that I moved here, I was experiencing a bit of sport culture shock, and kind of coming from that U.S. or Western level of elite sport. I just was a bit surprised at some of the limitations that there was in regards to resources, facilities, personnel, support staff, all that kind of stuff. And so when I first came out, I did a lot of readjustment that year. So actually about 2 years of readjustment, just kind of wanting to focus on making me the best rugby player that I could be, because actually at that stage, I hadn't played rugby in over 10 years, because that's during the time that I was in the Army. So I hadn't played rugby in a decade. And when I came here, I just was kind of focused on being the best me that I could to be part of the team, because I became the captain after a couple of months of being here and being involved in the team. So for me, it was trying to understand like what the difference is and how can I best support in trying to use some of my American ways of motivating my teammates, which wasn't necessarily welcomed with a lot of favor. So I realized really early on that that there are different styles and different approaches for different teams. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and so I really had to take that on as a learning for myself, and I've been able to apply that ever since. And so I think just my passion when I came here to realize like actually there's a lot of things missing to make the women's rugby scene better. And from there, it kind of grew from women's rugby to kind of the rugby, the whole rugby thing for boys, girls, women, men. It was really just kind of evolved from that. So I just realized like I really love the sport, and I want to make it accessible to everyone. And as you know, rugby is not necessarily a super popular sport yet in the Philippines, so we've got lots of room to grow. But it's really basically about finding out how can we do better and support the grassroots movements, and then how it's like having a top-down and a bottom-up approach. So there's no kind of one solution fits all. It's really about, okay, we've got to inject at the grassroots. We've got to get more Filipinos playing the sport, but also we've got to be performing at the upper end with our national teams for our men's and women's, so that boys and girls want to be like the Volcanoes. They want to be like that, and so it's really about trying to find the balancing point when you have limited resources to be able to come in the middle, and that the whole program is complete.
I love that. I love the top-down, bottom-up approach and meeting in the middle. I think that's something that a lot of our of teams, organizations can learn from. And there's always that challenge of meeting in the middle, because it's always so, it feels so far from each other. You know, like in certain sports here in the Philippines, the grassroots is so far from the professional level. So that's why a lot of kids don't actually end up going so far too, because there's not much to look forward to, right? So
Yeah, look, and I wouldn't want to say that we have found the middle point yet. We are definitely a work in progress.
Yes, but it's good to know that that's something that you're really looking at and hoping to aspire to. So I noticed that the sport is very conscious about creating the right environment for those involved in it, whether it's about safety standards when training kids, or providing the space and opportunity for people to grow in the sport, whether on the field or in its administration. So let's focus especially on the value of creating spaces, and particularly your thoughts on gender equity. So you were named the first woman member of the World Rugby Council, and that was also from the council's push to have more seats on the table for women, right? So why do you think it's important for organizations, teams, to be more conscious about having more women involved?
Well, I mean, obviously there's a much bigger conversation about diversity that could be had. And I think it's kind of, as I said earlier, about recognizing the differences of approach and kind of taking an assessment of where you are currently. And if you want to be able to make a change, I think a lot of organizations, especially within Asia and especially in the Philippines, You've kind of got to create your plan and your step-by-step approach to be able to create more diversity within your organizations. And so I think for a lot of organizations, I mean, I'm not a quota person, but I think that you've got to create the spaces for these women to come up, because what I find is that there are a lot of women that are not willing to even apply for a particular position because they're like, well, somebody else is going to get it anyways, or I don't have the experience that they're looking for, or, I mean, we could just come up with so many different reasons why we won't get this. And they've actually done studies where it's kind of like, generally speaking, a man would go for, let's say, an interview, and if he's at 50%, confident that he has the qualifications that they're asking for, he's going to go for it. But a girl, she could have 80%, but she'll focus on the fact that she doesn't have the 20% of the qualifications that they're looking for and not go for the job. And so it's kind of recognizing that that's the space that we're in right now, and how can we encourage more women to take up these roles? How can we build up their confidence until at such a time it becomes normal? And then that's when we look at, right, oh, well, now it's just, I mean, we have a lot of women, we have a lot of men, and now we're looking at, okay, the best people for the team, the best people for the organization. But in order to get that, in order to create that diversity in the first place, sometimes you've got to give people a little bit of an extra hand to get there.
Yeah, it's like what we talked about before on that picture of the boxes, right? On equity, sometimes it's just the reality of life that some people are just more privileged, have more opportunities, and that's why we have to create these spaces so that there others will have the chance also to gain experience. Because otherwise, if we're not so conscious about creating these spaces, how could they actually shine? So,
right, exactly.
So one of the challenges of I'm going back to being a woman again. So one of the chances of being a woman is that certain opportunities aren't given to us because we can get pregnant, or sometimes we're told we shouldn't pursue something because as mothers we have to focus on raising our kids. But here you are, you're a mother of two, you're doing great things in the world of rugby and adding value to Philippine sports. So how do you do it?
Well, if I'm super honest with you, it's not easy. A lot of my friends like to call me Superwoman from time to time, which I really have to take with a grain of salt because it's really just an optic. And I think that it is really, really hard to, in today's society right now, it is quite difficult to be a mother and to be pursuing your passion, and especially when it comes to sports in Asia. So I guess for me, it's about recognizing that I want to create a world where they don't have to worry about these lack of opportunities for them. So if my girls want to get into sport one day, then then that if it can be just a little bit better for them, that's kind of the world that I want to create for them. And so when people tell me, oh, don't your kids miss you when you're gone? Shouldn't you be spending more time at home, as you said? It is really hard for me, actually. And I kind of end up with this, I think it's called like mom guilt or something. I don't know what it's called, but it's like I end up getting this kind of really deep, guilty feeling about like, oh, maybe I should be at home with my kids. What am I doing? I'm such a bad mother. And then I kind of regroup and I think to myself, okay, wait a second. Who's asking the fathers these questions? And it's dads have the same responsibility as moms to have an equal share of parenting. And so it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to hear that feedback from time to time. But if I want to create the space for my kids to not hear those questions, I'm going to have to keep grinding. I'm going to have to keep trying to change that. And I'm going to have to keep coming up against people saying that till such a time that people say it less and less and less. And then hopefully one day, not at all.
Is this something that you think your kids are aware of? Is this something that you talk to them about?
I do talk to them in sort of little stories. So, I mean, like, they're only 5 and 10. So I'm not like talking about big, justice, gender justice and equity and all that kind of stuff. But, when they pick up a toy, if my youngest one is 5, if she says to me, Mommy, that's a toy for boys. And I say, no, actually, this is a toy for boys and girls. And we have kind of little mini conversations about the context of what is gender. And I mean, they don't know we're talking about the context of gender, but it could be like somebody saying, oh, you shouldn't cut your hair because, you know, you'll look boyish, or you won't be as beautiful if you have short hair. And it's not kind of like reinforcing the message. Like, actually, there are lots of amazing boys and girls who have different lengths of hair. And, oh, by the way, it doesn't actually matter what you look like, because what's really important is who you are on the inside. And so those are the kinds of conversations that we have. I really try to focus on you know, them pursuing their passions, looking however they want to look, and, you know, don't let anybody kind of tell you that you shouldn't do something just because you're a girl.
I love that. Can you be my mom? Sorry, mom. My mom doesn't watch this. But going back to you saying that it wasn't easy for you. I mean, you have a lot of responsibilities, and your responsibilities aren't limited to what you do here only in the Philippines, because you also work in the World Rugby Council, right? So your schedule is pretty packed for sure, right? So how do you,
Yeah.
when things get difficult, what are the things that you do, or, you know, what that you're grateful for that makes it easier to go through?
I think that that's a really good question, actually. I think for me that now, more than ever, we need a support system. And I think that's the thing that's really drawn me so much. So, I mean, coming from a figure skating background, it's a really individual sport, right? You rely on yourself, you're true to yourself, you're pushing yourself, driving yourself. But in the team sporting environment, right, when you, whether it's American football, which I didn't have the best support system at that time, but the Army or in rugby, that community that you have of people that are kind of going through the same thing as you, or feeling the same thing as you, or whatever, you just build these bonds and friendships. And I think when things get overwhelming for me, it's kind of just being able to pick up the phone, call up one of my friends, and be like, today was a really bad day. and sometimes it could mean like having a bit of a cry, or just absolutely venting, or I mean, it could look at like a whole bunch of different things. And you know, sometimes some days are a little bit better than others. Sometimes I might need to call a couple of friends up to vent for a couple of times. But really, I think that's the thing that's kind of helped me to get through any time that I'm like feeling really sad, or feeling really anxious, or really stressed. And often it's like just having that call with somebody can help bring a little bit different perspective, or kind of just like voicing it out instead of keeping it inside my head, just like blah, just kind of vomiting my stuff on somebody in a safe space, obviously. Kind of it can really help provide a bit of release that you need to just get through that moment and be able to get to the next moment.
Yeah, so that's about the value of having a support group, or safe space, or sometimes I call it we call it a rant space. You know, you're free to just say whatever, and no judgment. I love that. I mean, I guess for us women, that's very common, and like with guys, I guess they have their own thing too, but usually we're more vocal about it. But yeah, so thanks for that. Really, we'll be talking to you more about the grind, and the other things that you've been doing, especially on the executive side. So thank you for sharing your story. And so, Relly, take it over.
Hey, I'm here. So hi, Ada.
Hey.
Okay, so before I ask my questions, I just want to get this off my chest first, right? You know, being a figure skater, who did you look up to? Who are those athletes on the Wheaties box? Was it Michelle Kwan? Was it Nancy Kerrigan? Was it Kate Mosley?
No. Oh. Actually, I met Nancy Kerrigan. No, the person that I wanted to be like was Christy Yamaguchi, 100%. She was
Nice.
Asian. I mean, right? So for me, yeah, she was like the most beautiful person that I'd ever seen, and I wanted to be exactly like Christy Yamaguchi.
And you had to have seen, you know, that cult film, The Cutting Edge, right? You had to have seen it. Come on, please tell me you did.
The original, though, right?
Exactly.
The original, not the remake. The original.
Exactly. One of my favorite films.
That tells my age a bit, but yeah, that's the original.
It tells mine as well. But anyway, okay. So going back to my question. Okay, so let's talk about you and you know, of course, your journey in the rugby scene. Of course, as an athlete, you came over in 2012, being the skipper of the national team, and then you know, just months after, you've taken on executive role as the Secretary General of the Philippine Rugby Union, and then finally and gaining a seat in the Asian Rugby Committee, and then of course, finally being part of the World Rugby Council, all in a span of what, less than 10 years, right? Or close to 5 years. So what was your key motivation to actually achieving this? I mean, what were the traits that you possess that actually got you to where you are now?
Well, I mean, I think really it was really just about being the best me all the time. Just as I said, even before with Robbie, it's just I was always kind of information hungry and always hungry to contribute and to do more. I guess I'm never satisfied to just leave well enough alone, I guess is the saying, right? Because in my view, well enough alone means that you're not growing, you're not adapting, you're not making anything better. Because even when something is good, it can always be better. Even when something is great, it can always be better. And so when I first became the captain for the national women's team, I wasn't thinking in my head, one day I want to be on the World Rugby Council. That was definitely not something that I was gunning for or thinking about. And it was just kind of like every step in my journey has just presented itself an opportunity when the time was right to take the next step, to step up into leadership, and then to kind of continue growing. And so kind of at the space where I was like, oh, well, yeah, I can do something to make my team better, right? That was my initial thought. I can make the team better. And then I got onto the Philippine Rugby Board, and it was like, okay, well, how can I make Philippines rugby better, right? Just for rugby in the Philippines. And then, you know, after that, it was kind of like, well, I think I could do something in Asia too. And so it was kind of like, how could I make rugby in Asia better? And then it kind of went that way until now I'm on the World Rugby Council, and it's like, how can I make rugby great in the world? How can I make rugby better? How can we get more boys and girls playing? Because ultimately, all of the comes back to the Philippines. If I can affect the change at a global level, then I'm also affecting change at the Philippines level. And so it's really funny actually now that I think about it, because I'm talking about this top-down approach and this bottom-up approach, and I actually sit at both ends of the spectrum. So I'm one of the few people who sit on the World Rugby Council who is still an active player. You know, most of the people that sit at that level have been retired for a number of years, and you know, talking about their good old days, right? Well, I'm still actually playing. I'm still connected with the players, so I'm connected at the grassroots level to be able to contribute a different perspective at that level. And so, I mean, and going kind of back to what Simone was saying earlier around like opportunities for women, when I was first, you know, appointed to get on the council, I was like so overwhelmed. I was thinking to myself, am I really ready for this? I mean, I'm going to be one of the youngest people on the council. I've definitely got the least amount of experience. And it was like, how can I contribute in that space? And then it was recognizing like, actually, I do have something to contribute. I've got something different. I'm connected to what's going on right now at the grassroots level. And there are lots of people that are connected at the sort of the elite level and all that other kind of stuff, but I can contribute in that way, and I can provide a voice that can really talk about developing in new markets, which is really what Asia is. We're a new market for rugby. And so that's kind of where I've built my confidence in knowing that I have something to contribute at that level.
And that's great. That's great. And you know, just the fact that you're always hungry and striving for change and improvement in the sport. You know, it's not only for rugby, right? But this is the kind of trait that we actually need for other sports as well, which I won't mention. But you know, it's something that we do. You know, people are just complacent and they're just happy where they are. But for someone like you, you know, you're there on a mission to make things better, especially on the local scene, and how to adapt, you know, what you've learned from globally, you know, here, and for us to help improve our players and, you know, and the sport in general. Now, Simone mentioned, you know, earlier, you being the first woman member of the World Rugby Council, right? And how was that? How was the experience dealing with these individuals? You know, because you like to think now, you know, that was a boys' club right there, and you came in now, and you're like the first woman to actually sit on that board. Was it tough to get your ideas across or be heard, or was it the opposite?
Well, I mean, even though I was the first, I was quite lucky in that the governance structure change for World Rugby meant that they had created the space. It was really a huge, unprecedented move. They created the space for 33% of the council to be female in a snap decision, not a snap decision, but in a single decision. They created the space for 17 women to join the council, which is really, really incredible to hear. And so while I was the first, I wasn't alone for very long. There were more women that came along quite quickly, which was really good. I think for me, I've said it in other talks that I've had with other folks about, like, change is not a decision, it's a journey. And so for me, it's really been a journey. And coming into the World Rugby Council and realizing, like, actually you need to take a little bit of time and understand the current, it's again, coming back, assessing the current context, because the context that I knew in Asia, the context that I knew in the Philippines, every team, every organization, and every level is different, a little bit different. And so I kind of spent a little bit of time in that first year just kind of taking it in and recognizing what's going on and the, who's who in the zoo sort of thing, right? Just kind of really taking a look at what's going on before I start thinking about, okay, what are the ideas that I want to bring to the table, which I already had, but it's about really recognizing, okay, there are different opinions here all over the table. And, it's just as important to listen to those differing opinions before expressing your own, because that way you have, like, the opportunity to listen, so that that what you're bringing to the table is after you've already assessed what everyone else has to say.
It's great, yeah. And I understand that you kind of play it safe at the start, but you kind of ease your way into generating your own ideas and sort of like, how do you put it? Like in Tagalog, like making timpla, right? You're just trying to see which ones are will accept it, which one needs a little more work and everything. So, and how does you becoming the most influential in rugby? I mean, how did you get to that point? I mean, how did that happen?
I honestly have no idea. I mean, when I saw, someone just sent me a message, one of my friends actually, and she also made the top 50 list, and she says, "That's amazing. We're both on the top 50 list." And I think really the recognition came because of the grind. I mean, I wasn't like out to try and become on the top 50 list of rugby folks in the world. It was just kind of me doing the thing that I'm passionate about. Me kind of just, this is what I really enjoy. This is what I want to contribute. And then other people recognize that. And I guess, I don't know. I mean, I'm still kind of like, wow, how did I end up on that list? But it's just me just kind of doing what I enjoy, doing what I'm passionate about, and just really trying to contribute and make change, drive change where I can.
And that's great. It's really all about the hard work and getting down to business, right? Without thinking of, what kind of recognition will I get for this, but it's really more of just, doing it for your own personal satisfaction, right? Okay, so, my last question is, it's really the current situation right now that you're headed into, right? So you're gunning for one of the top positions in the Philippine Olympic Committee, right? Going up against a top caliber personality at that. We've seen women in the past years making their mark in Philippine sports. Christy Ramos, during her time, was president of POC. Akika Thompson, just a few years ago, was in the PSC, right? And Mikey Coaco Jaworski now in the IOC. So, these are women that they're very inspirational, and I know that's something that you can actually continue on, in terms of this whole women movement. So, what is your mindset on this, knowing, let's say, the uncertainties that this election could bring to you? And not to mention, of course, how very political it is on all corners, right? Win or lose, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, I guess, I mean, for me, like I said before, and kind of throughout, that seems to be the theme throughout this conversation. It's kind of like, yes, I'm stepping up into a space, and I'm actually like, this is a whole new space for me, right? I mean, I've really been focused rugby. And in 2016, I joined the Women in Sports Commission for Philippines for the POC, just because I was like, oh, well, I mean, for me, I want to see how I can do more for women in sports specifically here in the Philippines. And then just kind of my experience now at the Asia rugby level and the world rugby level, and recognizing like actually there's a lot of things that we could do to make Philippine sports better. I'm not discounting the amazing stuff that people before me have done, not discounting any of the hard work that all those people have done, but I think it's just about being able to provide a new perspective. And, you know, I'm actually going to be running as an independent. So running as an independent means that I don't have a political agenda. I'm not here to drive some of the things that are really polarized that are going on. I want to find this middle ground. How can we take, as I said, the conversations that are happening all over the room, find some common ground and find kind of a way forward. And that kind of means doing some of the stuff that we've had in the Philippine Rugby Union around creating a strong strategic plan, you know, making sure that even if we disagree on maybe this individual point or that individual point, kind of recognizing that we're all moving together in the same direction, and that despite we having these disagreements, that we can always come back to this strategic plan, right? Always come back to the strategic plan, say, okay, is this in alignment with what we've said we're gonna do for, well, usually in the POCs, in that space, it would be like on a 4-year cycle, right? Every Olympic cycle. So it'd be like, okay, are we gonna do what we said in this 4-year cycle? And everyone then can be accountable. Everyone then can be, you know, saying, this is what we said we were gonna do. Did we do it? If we didn't do it, why couldn't we get there? And, you know, how can we recalibrate, redirect ourselves to make sure that we're still going in a forwards direction?
I guess what you're trying to say is that, you know, whatever happens, you know, in this situation right now, in this center stage, as the, you know, which is this election, you know, it's a chance for you to really just communicate what needs to be done, the changes that need to change, and, you know, it's really disrupting the whole landscape, right, for the better. And, you know, it's something that you could leave your mark. And, you know, I wish you all the luck. You know, we're all rooting for you here, and we hope that you get that position, because, you know, that's going to make us all happy right now. I mean, all the
thanks, really, I appreciate it. I mean, I think, and the thing for me is that, you know, obviously it would be amazing to win, and I hope that I can, but I guess for me, it's like whether I win or whether I don't win, I'm going to keep grinding. I'm going to still keep doing the work, and it doesn't really matter. You know, titles are titles, but when you're passionate about improving, when you're passionate about making change, you still continue on. And so, you know, obviously, the best of luck to all the candidates that are vying for positions in the POC, and I hope that they also feel the same way, that whether they win or lose, it's the winners here are the Philippine athletes. The winners here are the NSAs that deserve the support that they need to be able to make their athletes more successful.
And I agree, and they should be. The winners should be the athletes. You know, that's what we have to think about. So that's great. So I turn it over now to Carlos for your final questions.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Relly, so much. Ada, there's a lot of interesting insights that the audience could learn from your career as a rugby player, as a soldier, as a mother, and as a trailblazer in the world rugby stage. I mean, you had to endure a lot of treacherous paths, some gap years, and some twists and turns left and right. And given your story, which deserves to be echoed to our daily grinders, to aspiring leaders who would like to overcome the challenges that they are currently facing, maybe know, what tips or what words of wisdom that you'd like to share to our audience?
Well, I guess I can think of three sort of top tips if I had to kind of reflect on our conversation and summarize it. The first one is probably that every challenge presents an opportunity. You know, it's one door closes, another window opens kind of thing. But yeah, really just lean into it. When there's a challenge, recognize that there's an opportunity. You just may not see it yet. The second one is probably around support, and just recognizing like strength looks a lot of different ways. And I think for me, a lot of times people think strength is like, oh, you're looking like Superwoman, right? But sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to pick up the phone and tell somebody that you had a terrible day and that you just need to talk about it. You don't need solutions. You just need someone to listen. And then the last one would probably be just staying true to yourself. success, I think if anything, success for me I thought success has looked a certain way at one time in my life. And as I've kind of gone through my leadership journey, I realized that success looks nothing necessarily like I thought it did. And so part of that transformation is being true to myself, staying true to the things that I'm passionate about, and recognizing that sometimes the success doesn't look the way you thought it would in the beginning, but it's just as much rewarding.
All right, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the most important life learnings from Ada Milby, that every challenge presents an opportunity, that sometimes the strongest that you can do is ask for assistance, and that staying true to yourself will eventually lead to your success, and often in ways you do not expect. All right, of course, now it's time for our monumental segment of the show known as Crunch Time. So, what are the rules of Crunch Time? Well, Ada, it's going to be very simple. We're going to give you some simple questions, and then you're going to give us some minimalist answers. No need to explain why, unless if we would like to know your side. All right, Ada, are you ready for Crunch Time?
Okay, let's do it.
All right, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and first question: rugby or American football?
Rugby.
Rugby. All right, next: juggling or monobiking?
Unicycling, monobiking.
Monobiking. All right, next: figure skating or swing dancing?
There's a tough one. Swing dancing, swing dancing.
Swing dancing. All right, next: upper body or lower body workout?
Lower body, love hate.
All right, lower body. Next: running uphill or cycling uphill?
Running uphill.
Running uphill. Next: diving or surfing?
Diving.
Diving. All right, next: scoring or facilitating?
Oh no, that's the toughest one. I think where I'm at now, facilitating.
Facilitating. All right, next: rugby player or rugby executive?
You guys are asking some really tough ones. Rugby player. 100%.
Rugby player. All right, next. Okay, I hope this will ease the burden. All right, let's go to some non-sports related questions. All right.
Oh, thank you.
Don't thank me yet, but we'll see. Okay, next. First, balot or adobo?
Adobo.
Adobo. All right, next. Red Horse or San Miguel beer?
San Miguel.
San Miguel. Next. Assault rifle or sniper rifle?
Assault.
Assault. Okay, next. Household pets or horses?
Horses.
Horses. All right. Yeah, this is getting easier for you now. Huh? Okay, next. Netflix or drinking out?
Netflix. Yeah.
Netflix. All right. Okay, next. Living in the U.S. or living in the Philippines?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Living in the Philippines.
Living in the Philippines. All right. Next, the final question. Okay, this will definitely be the easiest. All right. Okay. Sam Milby as singer or Sam Milby as actor?
You know, there's no winning in this situation, is there? Bro, I'm so sorry. Sam Milby is an actor.
Okay, Sam Milby is an actor. All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Bro.
All right, there you have it. That wraps up Crunch Time. And of course, our fellow gold diggers and as well as our guests would like to have their final messages said. So Simone, Relly, and Robbie, tell the audience what we have in store in the next coming weeks.
So hey guys, again, just wanted to say thank you for being with us tonight. And catch us again next Saturday at 8 p.m. Our guest will be the mover and shaker of Mindanao sports, Coach Noli Ayo. So you wouldn't want to miss this. So again, thank you, Ada, and we'll see you next weekend.
So thanks again, Ada, for this conversation with us, and we hope to have more leaders like you in Philippine sports, paving the way for a better environment and culture, especially for our athletes. And To our teammates, thanks again for joining us. We hope you could share with us on Facebook your thoughts and what you learned from this episode and tag the Gold Diggers PH. Or you could simply share our posts or comment on our video uploads on Facebook and YouTube. And send in your questions for Coach Nolly Ayo and we will ask them on our episode with him. So we'd love to hear from you guys, so please don't hesitate to send us a message.
Thanks, Sim. So again, thank you, Ada, for such an inspiring conversation. We hope our audience, our teammates, have really picked up a thing or two in this discussion. So before I turn it over to Ada for her final message, allow me to thank you so much for staying tuned and following our conversations with the Gold Diggers. In our last episode, we proudly shared that our first recipient of Pitch in PH efforts is none other than fellow athlete and Gold Digger, the woman in action herself, Gretchen Ho, for her Donate a Bike, Save a Job campaign, where we turned over 10 bikes with the help of your generous support. So thank you so much for that. So let's keep the fundraising coming as we try to pool our resources once more for another worthy cause. Please follow the Gold Diggers PH Facebook page for more details on this passion project and learn how you too can make a contribution. So Ada?
Final thoughts, my final message, I guess. I mean, you know, kind of on the theme of this show, it's like, it's not just about sports. The conversations that we're having is about life, right? I mean, sports is a training ground for life, but at the end of the day, we're all living life. And so I guess just like keep grinding, know that we're all in this together. Phone a friend as often or as you know, as much as you need. And really just like, yeah, hang in there. We're all in this together. So like, keep doing the grind, keep doing you, keep doing what you're passionate about. And you know, I'm really looking forward to seeing what's next for you guys on the Gold Diggers PH. I'm really thankful for you guys to have me on the show today. I think for me, it's like that phoning a friend. This conversation is kind of like phoning a friend for me also, because it's kind of like, sometimes there's stuff that I'm thinking about that I'm challenged with, and kind of going through this journey helps to reinvigorate me and re-inspire me as well. So really thanks to you guys for having me on the show. And I really wish you guys the best of luck moving forward for Gold Diggers PH.
All right, there you have it. That ends our session for today. Once again, my name is Carlos Pineda, and this is Gold Diggers. Remember to dream, dig in, and win. See you next time on our next episode.